Hey everybody, welcome to a Moment of Clarity. I've got a prediction as to what's going to happen in the Democratic primary elections, and it's kind of horrifying, but I think we have to plan rather than just hide our heads in the sand. Now, something you need to know before we get to the prediction is that Bernie Sanders has been surging, all right? Recent national polls have showed he is winning in the nation for the first time. They've also shown that he is winning in Iowa. He's winning in New Hampshire. He's winning in California, okay? Bernie Sanders is surging in a lot of ways. He also has picked up a lot of very important labor endorsements. He has the most money, the most individual donors. He's got the most people coming out to his events. He's got the largest ground game. He's got the biggest number of people that are willing to fucking knock on doors in the cold, in the rain, and walk around and say, hey, let's chat about fucking politics. He has the most of that. No one's standing in the rain for Buttigieg. You out of your mind? People wouldn't stand on a nice day with birds flittering around for Buttigieg. And considering those recent labor endorsements, this is increasingly becoming a race of the average person, the working man and woman, versus the billionaires, in many cases literally, Bloomberg, etc., Steyer. It is the working people against the billionaires and multimillionaires like the Clinton machine, the Joe Bidens. So the point is, Bernie Sanders is beginning to take this thing over. And here are my predictions. Some of them are not surprising. Then as we get into the later ones, some of them may shock you. Number one, the Democratic Party establishment will come out to trash Bernie Sanders. We'll crawl out of the woodwork like a million little termites, and they've already begun doing this, right? Hillary Clinton did a fucking horrible video where she said no one likes him, which, is that really Hillary Clinton saying no one likes Bernie Sanders? Right. She already did that. She said she wasn't sure she could endorse him, and now she's kind of backtracking on that. But you'll see the others coming out as well. They will come out to try and stop a true progressive from winning this primary election. Okay, you'll see Bill Clinton come out. You'll see Obama come out, who said that if Bernie continues to run away with it, he may have to step in. You'll see John Kerry come out, or some other DNC, old school establishment, bullshit politician who looks like a horse fucked a lamppost. You're gonna see more and more of them coming out of the woodwork to try and stop Bernie Sanders. Number two, they will try and keep the race close enough that they can force it to a convention vote so that the superdelegates come back into play. And I know many people have been talking about this, so I'm not the first to say it, but they changed the rules so that superdelegates are not involved in the initial primary process. But if it goes to a second vote at the convention, the superdelegates all rush back in, and they're like demons going, They all come running out like zombies into a cafeteria where there's a bunch of people sitting around without any weapons. Like they just come running out, and that's the moment it gets to a second vote in the convention. So the corporate Democrats, the establishment Democrats, the Clinton machine, the Joe Bidens are hoping to keep it close enough with Bernie Sanders, even if he's winning, they're close enough that they can force it to a second vote. And then you get all the superdelegates in, and they'll all vote for Biden or, maybe even Elizabeth Warren, just to stop Bernie Sanders. Number three, and this happened last time, so you all will remember it. They will do everything they can to slightly massage each of these primaries, all right? Even in Iowa, we saw election fraud. We saw people jotting down the wrong tallies for the raising of the hands in the caucuses, right? We saw that in Iowa. And for a moment, the Bernie Sanders campaign actually complained and said that they didn't believe the election results, and then they were told to shut up. And so they never criticized the election results going forward. But it started in Iowa. It started with the first contest last time around, and they're going to do it again, okay? So you got to keep your eyes open for all this shit. Now, remembering some of the tricks from the last time around, they're going to close polling places so that the polling places in Bernie Sanders areas are not open, harder to get to, different hours, shorter hours. We saw this in many states. They're going to purge people from the voter rolls. We saw this in New York City. That was the most notorious one. 200,000 likely Bernie voters, meaning it was a strong Bernie Sanders area, were purged from the rolls. So that when they went to try and vote, they were told, we're sorry, you're not on the roll, but you can fill out a provisional ballot. And ultimately, the New York City Board of Elections had to admit in court that they had purged those 200,000 people. Certain people were fired, but that was the end of it. It could all still happen again. Nothing has changed in the way many of these primaries are set up. The same frauds that happened last time could very well and likely will happen this time around. In California, as I covered on Redacted tonight, they have a way of stopping independent voters from voting because independents tend to go for the more progressive candidates. So to stop the independents is to help Biden, it's to help Buttigieg, it's to help these corporate candidates. And the way they do it is by not giving you the real ballot. If you are an independent, do not sign up for the American Independent Party. You have to be on no party preference. And then you have to say, I want the Democratic crossover ballot. Anyone you know in California, tell them they have to ask for the crossover ballot or they will not be given a ballot with the presidential choices on it. Also, it has to go in the crossover ballot folder, or else they could put it in the other folder when they take your ballot and then they won't count it because they'll think it doesn't have presidential choices on it. Number 4, they will do everything they can in their power to not count the provisional ballots. They do this in a lot of different ways. One of them is to throw out every ballot that has a stray mark on it. Another one is to say, oh, your signature was slightly off this day because you hadn't had enough sugary drinks and so your hand was a little shaky and that means it's not really you doing it. It's some shaky guy who's trying to impersonate you in the California primary election, which fucking never happens. No one is impersonating other people at these goddamn voting booths because who has the time? Who wants to do that shit? Then, even if the provisional votes are counted, they do it so long after the amount of time it takes to count. No one cares by then, all right? If the California votes are counted 3 weeks, 2 weeks after the actual date of the election, no one's paying attention. Nothing would change. They just wouldn't. They quietly bury them. They don't let people see the audit. They will cover up the counting process, actually proving whether this is a legit election or not. Best plan, if you really want your vote to count, is not to accept a provisional ballot, to demand your right to vote, to demand a crossover ballot if you're in California, or if you're somewhere else, demand your right to vote. Because the affidavit ballots, the provisional ballots, they're fucking fairy tales. Number 5, some of the machine votes will also be rigged. And it's tough to know how prevalent that is. The code is proprietary. You can't watch it. You can't check it. A lot of these states do have audits of the machines, but they cover them up. They do them out in the middle of fucking nowhere, and they try not to let anyone see that the machines are legitimate or not. And so the only real way to tell whether these machines are accurate, whether we're getting a legit result, whether you're getting an actual election, where we're actually standing up for our democracy, whether all of that fucking bullshit we're sold, all these names and words and things, but democracy and elections and republic and all that, whether any of that shit is true. The main way you can tell is exit polls. But they've gotten rid of most of the exit polls. There used to be one company still doing exit polls. Now, I think, I don't even know if they're going to be reporting on those anymore. It's called Edison Research, but I don't know whether our media will be telling us those results, so who knows? But exit polls generally show fraud within 2%. And we aren't given the legit exit polls. The exit polls last time around in 2016 showed that the results were way off from the exit polls. And number 6, this is the one. This is the prediction that almost no one is talking about. It's the nuclear option for the DNC, for the Democratic Party. If they've done everything they can to stop Bernie Sanders, if they've trotted out all the ancient Democratic establishment to say, oh, Bernie, no one likes him and all that bullshit, if they've done all the rigging and fraud and stopping people from voting that they could possibly manufacture, if they've tried to push it to a second vote at the convention, but there's Bernie Sanders is running away with it to such a degree that even the superdelegates are not enough to stop him from winning. Then there is another option. There is a nuclear option for the DNC that they just recently put into play, that they just recently put into their bylaws. And that one is declaring that Bernie Sanders or any candidate is not democratic enough. You weren't a good enough so-and-so with the Democratic Party. You haven't really done your part. We don't feel that in your soul you're a Democrat. And at that point, the DNC chair, Tom Perez, can say, you can't be our presidential nominee. And that's all it takes. Just fucking snap of the fingers. He can decide at any point that this is not a legitimate campaign, that Bernie Sanders doesn't count. And this is hardly being talked about at all. This should be discussed. We should be arguing about what would happen if this happens. If the DNC declares Bernie Sanders or any progressive, whatever, whoever, not democratic enough. It would definitely be a nuclear option because it would almost guarantee that the Democratic Party would lose to Donald Trump. I mean, it would guarantee it because whoever they put in after they obliterate the run of Bernie Sanders would be despised, would be hated. 53% of Bernie supporters say they wouldn't vote for some other Democrat. And so imagine if the DNC just wiped out his campaign and said, not democratic enough. He's an independent. You know, he caucuses with the Democrats, but he's not really democratic enough. And they just forced him out, ended it right there. They would lose to Donald Trump. But here's what people aren't considering. They're okay with that. The Democratic establishment is okay losing to Donald Trump. They prefer Donald Trump over a Bernie Sanders. They prefer Donald Trump. They prefer corporate greed over a true progressive. They prefer the Wall Street running everything. They prefer ignoring climate change. They prefer gutting our entire environment, our entire world around us over someone who actually questions certain aspects of capitalism. They prefer that. They would rather have Donald Trump in that office than Bernie Sanders. And so they could very well use this nuclear option. I'm not saying they will, but I'm saying it's a possibility, and people should be fucking talking about it. They'll do some stuff beforehand to make it seem justified. They'll, spend a few weeks calling Bernie Sanders a Russian asset or something. Oh, he once took a trip to Moscow. He has a Russian doll in his house. He likes Russian salad dressing. Like, they'll do something to accuse him of being, un-American, outside the mainstream, and worse than they already have. And they'll do that to lay the groundwork so that they can then say, sorry, you can't be the Democratic nominee for president. So the question then becomes, what can we do? What can you do? What can anyone do? Well, whether you support Bernie Sanders or not, you can fight for a legitimate election. You can demand votes be counted. You can get angry when you see a difference between exit polls and the actual vote count. You can stand up. You can educate those who don't know how to vote correctly or don't know how their vote could be stolen or could be taken away from them. But the most important thing is people need to start planning now for what to do if this thing is stolen, if this thing is not legit. Because if everyone just goes home and sulks or whatever, oh man, it happened again. Oh, woe is me. I'm gonna turn on fucking video games. Yay. If we all just sulk and go home and decide it's over and oh shit, it happened again, start the planning now. Start deciding what will be done if this thing is rigged or if they use some sort of nuclear option to put in a corporate candidate. How will people stand up? How will they protest? How will they get active? People have to get up and fight and strategize and organize. If not now, then fucking when? We got like 9-10 years to the point of no return with the environment. It might be a good time to get angry. And that's my prediction for what could happen in this Democratic primary. Be ready for it. Start talking about it. Start addressing it. If you want me to keep you up to date on how things are unfolding, just text the word redacted to 33777. If you're in America, you just type the word redacted, 33777. It's free. It'll get you signed up to the email list. That is it. No cost. Nothing. If you're international, you can also do it at leecamp.com. And please share this video. Get the word out there. Let's at least start talking about this. And please share this video if you see fit. Click the subscribe, click the bell, and keep fighting!